birthdays or anniversaries this week?
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. I got all kinds of the good stuff in there. You get one too? Happy anniversary.
Yeah, he's in the stocking.
I'm in the chair.
Sweet 16.
You're saving the chair. You can't give it.
Alrighty.
Oh,
You know what? I forgot, Oliver, I had it in my hand, I forgot to take one for myself. Can you bring me a bulletin? And if you don't have a bulletin, raise your hand and Oliver will bring one to you.
wow. That's a lot of people.
That was clever to be doing it that way, wasn't it? I almost wish I planned it that way. Just a couple things to note. I am going to note about a fall festival. It's a brand new event that the youth have been planning, and we're putting it together. There's going to be different games, hot dogs and stuff. October 28th. It's a Saturday, the last Saturday of the month. Go ahead and bring your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, anyone you want to do this. And just get a fun day. Just get out there and get the community, let them have some candy and fun. And a safe place to be. Speaking of candy, we do need candy. And probably a lot of it. So if you can, please bring candy and contact me if you want to help. Because I need help, I need candy, I need...
Carrots.
That's not candy. We need individually wrapped candies. They don't make carrots individually wrapped.
But you can always say,
Yeah, but nowadays parents are real leery about taking fruits and vegetables from strangers.
But they'll take candy.
Apples come individually wrapped.
Yeah.
they do. So do
Yeah, covered in caramel and candies.
Sorry.
So what do you need the candy for?
For our fall festival, we're going to be giving out to the kids at different prizes for the games. And if it doesn't meet my approval, don't worry, it will stay in a safe place. I will eat it myself. My wife's not here to stop me, so.
We can tell on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, you guys will tell on me.
We know who your wife is.
A lot of you know where I live, too.
That's right.
That should scare me. Our annual business meeting will be on October 29th after service. So just hang out with us for that, to just hear what's going on in the church and just get an update of everything going on with the church. I think Casey had something. I can't remember. It wasn't something big, was it?
Something upcoming.
Because someone told me something about cutting into sermon times.
Yeah, I get yelled at if we go late.
Yeah.
You're looking at your bulletin. There's an announcement in there for Follow the Star. Follow the Star is coming up in the second weekend of December. We're going to have a program at the high school this year. It's not going to be outdoors. It's not going to be in a parking lot or on the street like it had been before. It's going to be at the high school in the auditorium. But Follow the Star is looking for volunteers, not volunteers to run booths. The booth part is going to be cut back this year. We're really focusing on the play, the production itself. So we want extra people, extra actors, to just be parts of crowd scenes in the play. In other words, we need people on stage in costumes, which we've got costumes, we've had costumes for previous years. We just need people that could help us out on stage. There are roles that literally have no lines, literally standing in the back on a scene, to just one or two lines, depending on what roles you're willing to fill. If you are interested in helping with Follow the Star, let me know. Well, they need actors. They're desperate for, I think, 18 people right now. They need 18 people. They're asking churches to get word out, to get people up. If you are interested, let me know. It only will take one night a week for rehearsals. Rehearsals are here in Belen at First Baptist, Monday nights at 6:30. One night until second week of December. And then those shows are Friday night and Saturday. So if you're interested, please, please, please let me know and I'll get you some information. We can go home on time.
Oh, awesome. There are other announcements in your bulletin. Please make sure you look at them and read them to see what's going on. So let's go ahead. I assume we have a children's sermon. Oh, Janice, you had something?
Just a reminder that the reception tomorrow for Head Cooper's funeral, after the funeral, will be at 11:30, not at noon. It's originally planned for noon. It'll be at 11:30 here at the church.
Oh yeah, I forgot, thank you. For those of you who have not heard, Ed Cooper passed away last week. And his funeral is going to be at Doblin Funeral Home at 10 a.m., but there's going to be a reception here at 11:30 tomorrow. So if you're able to make it, just come and show the family support, and as well as just be in prayer for them as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pray. Heavenly Father, right now we do lift up the Cooper family as they mourn the loss of Ed. Give them comfort. Give them peace. We thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We thank you for these children that are going to be coming forward and the sermon you've given Casey and Miss Joanne. Lord, to speak to our hearts and teach us what we must know. In your most precious name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Children, you're welcome to come forward. I have one child here already. He's my tag-along.
Floor.
No, floor. Sit, Ryder, on the floor in front of me, please. Right here, because Miss Joanne's going to sit right there. So let's sit right here, guys.
Make it happen.
Now let's get over this way. Miss Joanne's gonna get this way. 'Cause
All right, Eli, right here, please.
she'll get a scolding.
There you go, Eli. Right there.
How are you doing? God bless you. How are you today? Are you doing good? Yep. Well, I'm not doing so good. I fell down. I'm not going to tell you how I fell down. How embarrassing. You know what I've got in this bag? What about, no, cotton balls. Where does cotton come from? Oh, it comes out of a cotton patch, doesn't it? Well, they do it all with machinery now, and cotton's picked with machinery. But when Joanne was a little girl, about 80 years ago, we went to California with another bunch of people, and we had to really work for a living, and Miss Joanne had to go to the cotton patch and pick cotton, because that's the way we did it then. We dragged a sack and we picked cotton. Well, one day we were out there in the cotton patch, and there were some people all around the cotton patch, and we called them strikers. Now, I know you don't know what a striker is, but a striker was a person who was trying to organize all of the workers into what's called a union, because they decided that better wages, easier work, more benefits, all of that would help us all. But we still had to pick cotton. I don't know how they were going to make it easier for us. But they were really mean. They were down there beating up people and chasing them out of the cotton field, and they were turning over cars and burning them, and they were doing all kinds of mean things. And my dad and mom and my brother and myself were down in the middle of the cotton field, and there was another family there with us. And my dad said, just keep working, keep working. So we bent to the task and kept working. And this other family was right there by us, and believe it or not, that man's name was Moses. And Moses had a wife, and he had 2 sons, and he had a daughter. And we had fun with the daughter because we called her Green Bean. And the reason we called her Green Bean was that every day when she come to the cotton patch, she wore a pea green felt hat with a red feather in it. Well, one day while we were down there working, my dad said to Moses, "Moses, what are you going to do if those strikers come down here after us?" And his answer was, "They may come down there where I have been, but they won't be down here where I am." Do you know that's the way we need to treat Satan when he comes and tries to present evil into our lives? Now, I'm really old, and there's been times in my life when I've done things I shouldn't have done. I doubt that you're old enough to really have gotten into trouble with things that Satan tempted you to do. But it's going to come probably in your life. And I thought about what Moses said. We need to keep Satan at bay. He needs to be a has-been instead of a I'm here with you. So I thought to myself about that, what was so funny about what Moses said, that those strikers might come where he had been. That's the way we need to treat Satan. Jesus presents a barrier between us and Satan. And Satan might come where we have been, but we need to be sure that we're not there anymore for his convenience. And we're not going to do his bidding. Can you promise that? That you'll try? We're going to be we're going to be right there with Jesus, and he's going to stand between us and evil things. Okay? Now, Oliver's going to come and pray for us. Oliver? Yoo-hoo! I'll tell you, you're like me now, you're getting old.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this fall weather, beautiful weather, cool weather. Thank you for this wonderful youth group we have here today. Our children, please put your hand on them. Please, thank you for this wonderful congregation. Please praise them and look right to them through the following days. Please pray for the people that's come with us today. Help them get well. Give them faith and become true believers in you. All this I ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Have a good day. God bless you.
All rise to your feet. We'll continue our praise and worship.
I was just listening to the lyrics of that song. All of you is more than enough for all I need. I want you to keep that in mind this morning. Our sermon this morning, I think is going to be right along those lines. All of you is more than enough for all I need. How are you all doing today? Congratulations, we've had a week without hail, without rain. Get to dry out a little bit, which is kind of ironic, seeing how we live in a desert and all. This morning, we're continuing with Beatitudes. We're looking at Matthew 5:5 And I have a question for you. What does the word meek mean?
Humble.
What does, oh, Miss Ann says humble. That's a good definition. What does meek mean? Anybody else got any ideas?
Strength under control.
Say that again.
Strength under control.
Strength under control. That'll help with what we're going to talk about. Strength under control. Well, if you got your Bible, let's take a look at Matthew 5:5. Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount here. This is the Beatitudes are the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. And I want to just remind you, before we even look at the Beatitudes, before we look at Matthew, the whole purpose for this sermon that's recorded here in Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is that Jesus was going to teach his disciples what it meant to live a life for him. And his message was a little bit unusual. It was unique. We had talked the last 2 weeks about these Beatitudes being a paradox, something that was unexpected, something that was hard to see how it could come about. We talked about mourning and how could people be blessed in mourning, how could people be blessed that were poor in spirit. Well, today we're going to be looking at Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek this time. And the promise is they shall inherit the earth. Well, let's talk about what it means to be meek. What does meek mean? Well, I wanted to share with you a definition that I found. Miss Ann and Danny were sharing, but I wanted to make sure I read this to you right, so I'm going to read it straight out of my notes. Meekness is humility toward God and toward others. So that's what Miss Ann was talking about, humility. But here's the key point. It is having the right or the power to do something. That goes to what Danny was saying. It is having the right or the power to do something, but refraining for the benefit of someone else. Having the right or the power to do something, but yet refraining for the benefit of someone else. Meekness, according to the Bible, is being humble and gentle toward others, and willingly being submissive and obedient to the Lord. It is not being selfish and arrogant, loud, or obnoxious. Rather, it is having a quiet but confident trust in the Lord and being willing and to do whatever it is that he commands. In regards to how a meek person would treat others, they would definitely be humble and gentle in both their words and their actions. So that makes me think, what would someone who was meek do? How would you recognize someone who is meek? And what exactly would you look for in that person? And I want to use some scripture to kind of base this idea on. So we're going to be flipping back to your Bible. Flip over to Psalms 37. We're going to look here at this psalm. Psalm 37 is a psalm of David, and it's one of his wisdom psalms. And David is writing this psalm because he's having difficulty in dealing with other people, dealing with troubles and situations. And who do you think he relies upon to deal with these situations? He relies on God. So I thought that would be a great place for us to look today. Psalm 37. Let's look at verse 10 and 11 out of Psalm 37. Psalm 37 says, "A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity." The meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. That is almost exactly what Jesus just said. David is saying the meek will inherit the land. Well, Jesus and David had the same thought here. The meek will inherit the land. And they're not just going to inherit land. They're not just going to come into possession. When David's talking, you know what land he's talking about, right? He's talking about Israel. But not just the land, yet enjoy peace and prosperity. Any of you willing to enjoy some peace and prosperity? Anybody?
Amen.
Anybody?
Amen.
We could stand some peace right now.
Yes.
Our nation could stand some peace right now. Maybe personally, maybe nationally, we could even use some prosperity right now. Let's look at some other things, other verses in this psalm that David wrote, and let's use it to really identify what being meek looks like. So if you got your bulletin, we're going to take some notes. I'm going to give you 4 things to look for when you're finding out if somebody is meek. 4 things. Here we go. We're going to start in Psalm 37. We're going to go back in that same psalm that you were just at, but we're going to go backward to verse 5 and 6. You were just looking at 10 and 11. We're just going to go back a few verses. And this is still 37. This is still David. David says, "Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will do this. And so if you do this, here's the promise. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. So let's start talking about what it looks like when you find out if somebody is meek. Step number 1, or item number 1 to look for, what do the meek do? They trust God. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him. Trust God. Does a meek person go out on their own actions? Do they rely on their own plans? No, trust God. David talks about a second thing here. I want to show you number 2. The meek commit their ways to God. How many times do we make plans that are not really God's plans? How many times do we set in motion steps that we think we should do, and yet farther down the line you find out, whoops, that was a bad idea. Shouldn't have done that. I can tell you firsthand, I had a 9-month ordeal where I did one of those jobs. It was probably one of the worst professional experiences I've had. Found out that the plan that I made was not the plan that God wanted to put in store for me. I was teaching 6th grade at La Merced, had a new principal, and the new principal and I kind of got crosswise on some things that I wanted to do that she did not want to do, and so I got kind of persnickety. Ooh, it's not every day I get to use that word. Persnickety, look it up if you need to. I got kind of persnickety, and I said, at the end of the school year in May, I said, fine, I'll go somewhere else. I had some friends that were teaching at the middle school, and so I talked to them, and I knew the principal there, and I got a job at the middle school. I left La Merced, went to the middle school, taught 8th grade math for 1 year. Howard's laughing. 8th grade math. Not that I have an 8th grader in my house or anything right now, but there's something to be said for 8th graders. Just saying.
Thanks.
Amen.
I'll move on. I won't dig my hole anymore. But I went to the middle school, and I found out that was not God's plan for me. It was by far the worst experience I've had. I went from dealing with my homeroom and a few extra homeroom of kids to 110 students. 110. We had 110 students. I taught 5 classes, 5 periods. So the classes weren't overcrowded or anything, but 110 students. We had 5 math periods. Those kids would come to me throughout the day, 5 classes. They had a prep, which I was in elementary. I was like, can you show me what a prep looks like? I've never had one of those. Prep period, what is that? Had to prep, which was kind of nice. But I had another class, another period, that was called study skills. You might be familiar with that. That's called a study hall. Except there's no place that they go to other than with me. And so those kids came to me in this study hall time, and when they were little 7th graders, they had been told at the middle school, you are at a time when your brains are not going to grow, your neurons are not expanding, this is a time for social growth, your brain cannot learn any new information, so don't worry about it. And you think I'm joking. No, they were actually literally told those words. And so when I showed up and I said, all right, let's sit down and let's get your homework done, they said, first of all, what's homework? Never had that before. What are you talking about? And I said, well, at study hall, we're going to actually work. Work? What the heck is that? Homework? I'm really not sure, but the base word there of work? So for 9 months, it was like pulling teeth to get kids to actually work. It was like the struggle of my year to get them to work. But yet, the only reason I was in that whole situation was because I got persnickety. I love that word. I might use that more often. I got stubborn with my principal, and I said, fine, I'll take my ball and I'll just go on home. Well, when I got to my plan of the middle school, I think God used those 110 kids to kind of make an impression on me that I should have been praying about it. I should have been looking for what His will was. I should have committed my ways to God. I should have trusted God's plan. First of all, I should have at least asked Him what His plan might have been in that situation, instead of just going off on my own. So the first 2 steps of somebody that is meek is that they trust God and they commit their ways to Him. All right? So if you've still got Psalm 37 with you, we're going to go a little bit farther along. We're going to go to verse 7. Verse 7 says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret. So, let's add to our list. You got step number 1, you got step number 2, things to look for determining if people are meek. Item number 3, the meek are quiet before God and wait for Him. In my story, there was no waiting for God. I left La Merced and immediately started talking to people saying, can you help me get into your school? Did I wait to see what God had to say about the matter? Not at all. I jumped right into it. Did not wait. Was I quiet? Oh no. I was telling folks, well, that lady, she did not do right by me. I'm going to go and I'll show her. I was telling folks my plan. When, by the way, we should underline the "my" in my plan. That was me. But it says, be quiet, wait for Him. I guess today is my day that, as a pastor, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to say, use me as your example of what not to do. Don't do what I did. Don't rush into something being kind of stubborn about it. Wait for God. He's got plans. He'll show you. Just be patient. Item number 4. This was a hard one. The meek don't worry over the wicked. David says, do not fret when people succeed in their ways. Do we look at people around us, maybe our neighbors, maybe coworkers, maybe family? Do we look at the people around us and we do a comparison? Well, how come he's got over there and I don't? Do you ever feel that way? How come they're enjoying such and such and I'm not? Do we look and try to see that the grass is greener somewhere? We do that a lot, I would guess. Even when somebody is doing something that we think is wrong, do we focus on them? If somebody calls us a name, somebody disagrees with us, someone doesn't like us, somebody we just get in a disagreement and argue with, do we sometimes obsess over them? Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. We sometimes get worried about what other people are doing, even when they're wrong in what they do. We sometimes get so hung up, focused on them, that guess where we lose our focus? God. That was step number 1 and step number 2. Trust in God. Commit your ways to Him. But yet, in this world, we got so many people around us, we got so many things going on around us, so many situations that are trials, or so many situations that are troubles, or crisis, or problem, relationships, money, health, whatever it may be. Do we get so wrapped up in those situations and those people around us? David says, those wicked people in their schemes. Do we get so wrapped up in those things around us that we lose focus on what David actually said at first? Trust in God. Commit your ways to Him. So, right now, you should have 4 items on your notes. If you're taking notes, trust in God. Commit your ways to Him. Number 3 is right here. Be quiet before God. Wait on Him. And number 4 is don't worry over the wicked. Now, I got a great biblical example to show you of in that regard. Someone that was so meek, that trusted in God's plans, that made God's plans his own plans. Someone that was actually quiet before God, that could wait on God's plans. And someone who did not worry over what the evilness was around him, that he just took care of doing his own thing that he knew he had to do. Anybody got an idea who I'm referring to? Jesus. Jesus. Jesus went to the cross. He went to Calvary. He was arrested. He was put on trial. He was convicted. He was crucified. And did Jesus at any point stop and wring his hands? Did he get on Facebook and rant and say, "Oh my gosh, you should hear what Pilate's calling me now"? Did Jesus do any of those things? Let me show you something. We're going to get out of Psalms and we're going to go to 1 Peter. So I want you to skip way ahead out of Psalms, go to 1 Peter. We're going to be looking at chapter 2. If Jesus is our example of meekness, what does that mean for us? What does Peter have to say about that? Peter says, "For God called you to do good, even if it means suffering, just as Christ suffered for you. He is your example, and you must follow in His steps." Jesus was the most perfect person to ever walk on this earth. Yet He was arrested. He was beaten. He was convicted. He was crucified, which, by the way, that's not the easiest, least painful death that you could go through. Yet nowhere, in no gospel story that you can find in your Bible, did Jesus once call upon some angels to come down and get him out of any of that. Did he once tell the disciples, "Hey, this is wrong. You need to fight for me"? As a matter of fact, this is Peter saying, if it means suffering just as Christ suffered for you, He is your example, you must follow His steps. Peter, by the way, was the guy who was in the garden when Jesus was arrested. Does anybody know what Peter did on that night when Jesus was arrested? What did he do? Oh, but when he was arrested, even before he denied Him, didn't he pull out a sword? Jesus was being arrested, and Peter's first thought was, that is wrong. Jesus is innocent. I'm going to fight it. His first instinct was to fight back. Did Jesus fight? Did Jesus say, Peter, good job. Thank you. Thanks for getting my back there, for helping? No. Jesus kind of called him out on it. And then that's not all he did. The man that was arresting him, the man that was putting Jesus in chains to arrest him, gets his ear cut off because Peter wants to defend him. And what does Jesus do? He heals him. In our time today, our society, those people that fight for their rights, that fight back, those are the people that we applaud. Those are the people that we hold up. Seen a John Wayne movie ever? Sorry, new generation. See, you know, John Wayne may not work for some people today. I'll use that one for you all. We, in our society, think that there's a virtue in that fighting back. But the problem is that when we fight back, who's going to receive the glory for that? Who's going to receive the honor, even if we are victorious in whatever we're fighting back from? We are. God doesn't necessarily get credit for that. Meek means being right, being correct, but yet because you trust in God, because you trust in His ways, because you've waited on Him, and you're not worried about what the world has to do about it or to say about it, knowing that you trust in God so much that you're going to wait to see how God is going to deal with the situation. Peter has something else I want to show you here. When he says that he is your example and you follow his footsteps, Peter actually gives a little bit more detail. So I want you to look a little bit farther down. Look at those next two verses. He says, he committed no sin and no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Peter was there that night. Peter saw everything that happened the night that Jesus was arrested. He stood there. He knew in his heart the right thing to do, because Jesus was innocent, was to fight back. Jesus, however, did not. He even healed the man that Peter had attacked. So when Peter says he did not retaliate, when he suffered, he made no threats, Peter knows that firsthand. How easy is that for us today? When someone wrongs us, when someone accuses us, when someone disagrees with us, or someone calls us a name, or somehow we are wronged, we want to fight back. We want to rectify it. We want to show you that you're wrong. Especially when we know we're right. But is that the way that God works? No. I hate to say it, that we're so good at trying to defend ourselves, at trying to be responsible about making sure that we're correct, that we kind of skip something here. He entrusted himself to him who judges justly. God has greater plans for us than anything we could ever conceive of for ourselves. Trusting in Him is hard. Commit your ways to Him is hard. We live in a fallen world. Things are not always going to be roses and puppy dogs and rainbows. Things are going to go wrong. People around us are going to be wrong. Maybe even in your own families, in your own household, it's going to be wrong. But what Peter is saying is that in that time, that's the time to trust in God. Commit your ways to Him. Be as meek as Jesus was. Jesus says, "Blessed are the meek." Do you think He had some Pharisees in His audience that day? You had some people who definitely were not meek. The Pharisees who were not humble, like Ann said, humility. The Pharisees who wore the gold, who wore the expensive clothes, who had people showing them respect wherever they went. That's not meek. Meek is trusting in God, waiting for Him, commit your ways to Him, and don't worry about everything else. That's it. And I'm not saying that's it, like that's an easy thing. But I'm saying that's the message today. Your homework? Well, that's easy. Be meek. That's it. You got notes. If you take notes home, if you forget how to be meek, it's right there. Got it with you now. Be meek. Let God bless you. What was the very first thing that David said would happen to the meek? They would inherit the land and they would prosper. They would have peace. So if you're looking for some peace, you're looking for some prosperity, do your homework. Show some meekness, and that peace and prosperity will come. And no, don't confuse and think that, oh my gosh, Casey's up there teaching a prosperity gospel. No. I'm teaching what Jesus promised in the Beatitudes. I'm teaching what David wrote about. I'm teaching what Peter saw firsthand with his own eyes that night. That's what I'm preaching. So your homework, be meek. Ted, would you bring up our worship team? We're going to have our invitation time. This is a time for people to